Welcome back to The Watch and She-Hulk, Episode 5. I have trouble thinking of a more pointless show than this. I'm once again joined by my lovely wife, the lady. How are you, lady?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Yes. Who is reviewing She-Hulk with me as well. Now, before we dive right into She-Hulk, if you actually want some good media, some good story, well, guess what? The launch campaign for the graphic novel adaptation of my book, Shad the Conqueror, is now released, and so you can get your copy not only on the graphic novel, there's collector covers, but also the second edition version of the novel as well. Leather bounds are available. Really exciting stuff, so do go check it out. The launch campaign is only for a certain time, so grab it while you can. And like, seriously, graphic novels, I love them, and this is what we're trying to do to actually make some good media, some good stories again, because everything's going downhill in a big way. So you'll really enjoy it. I highly encourage you to do it. And there's even some...
This is the first time that Shad's been able to offer signed copies of the novel and of the graphic novel. So if you're after signed copies, this is your chance.
This is an Imperious letter opener. You can also get one of these as well. And you know I love leather bounds. So you can now get leather bound as well. I'll be getting one. They're brilliant. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay. She-Hulk, Episode 5. I mentioned, I'm not sure I can think of a more pointless show. This is like vapid, like pointless drivel that's wrapped up in stupidity. What do you think, hun?
At this point, I just figure this must be what they're going for because it's all we're getting.
But it's like a sitcom thing, but then aren't they supposed to be funny?
That's the theory?
And the other thing is, nothing... And I mentioned this in the last episode, and I was right. They're going to give up on anything of weight, seriousness. They're not going to remember anything, and they're just trying to go on, make a funny, happy show, because the whole context of this show, like this episode, is once again completely ridiculous. So it's as boring and bad as ever, unfunny drivel. And so, yeah, 1, 2 out of 10 at most. Hun, what do you think?
Yeah, at first of this show, I thought, oh, maybe they're finally going to make some improvements here, but they just tease out and don't actually make any changes.
So that's the non-spoiler section. We'll go into spoilers now, and to contextualize what I was saying, that the entire premise of this episode is so stupid. Titania is suing She-Hulk. Suing She-Hulk for breach of or cease
for use of her trademarked name. So she's now using She-Hulk. This is Titania as her brand and promoting beauty product named She-Hulk. And so she's now suing Jennifer Walters for using the name She-Hulk because she's trademarked it.
And I just like. Titania, she tried to murder a whole heap of jurors, right? How is she not in prison? Again, they don't care. They will not follow up on anything that they set up in previous episodes, and they will not allow any stakes to be built, so you're not invested, and they do not care about consequences in any measure or logical consistency. This crazy, lady, Titania, literally tried to murder people, and she bashed through like a wall in the courtroom, and she was beaten up by the Hulk, and then she's not in prison. She's sure, what? All right.
Mind you, the legal system can be weird. They might have just fined her because she's rich.
Attempted murder? that's not a small thing. And so there's that, and then this whole kind of legal bullcrap. Who cares? It's so dumb, and this is the whole episode, the meat of it is that pathetic, like, courtroom, conversation, which is boring as anything. And then there's a side plot of her getting an outfit,
because she's been looking like
a frumpy.
Looking really weird in her men's suits that don't fit. And, they're teasing that, she's going to finally get an upgrade and look half decent through it. But...
Then they don't even let you see.
They don't let you see any of it.
So they tease you for a reveal, and they just cut away before it ends. And then they show, Daredevil's mask is in the, this thing. Is like, the whole setup of this guy who's making outfits is also ridiculous and dumb. And the way
they make it out that it's really exclusive that he's making superhero costumes. But there's very few of the superheroes that even have any money.
Yeah.
And so if it's making it so exclusive, who's paying them?
They're trying to set it up like he's doing this illegal thing. Then it seems like he has high-class clientele. And, okay, maybe if he's dealing with, like, weapons and stuff, that might mean he has to do it a bit underground and everything. But the way that they get in by saying, oh, she's going to be on the Avengers, no evidence, no, nothing. It's just on the word. And it's so clear that they're bullcrapping because they even make it a point in the episode that the guy's watching him through a camera is like, oh, I can see you do it. Yes, like they're saying, yes, our lie worked. He can see that. And then... See, the reason why it makes me speechless, right, is that they actually think these things justify the plot, what happens in the episode, when it doesn't. They just do stuff, and then they have that build off into other things when there's no justification for anyone to actually respond the way they are in the show, to the point where you're just watching random crap with no justification, no payoff, and it's nonsense. It's pointless. That like everything that happens in this show, because there's no proper setup, it is so pointless. It's incredible.
So is it even worth bringing it up on the screen to show their points? Because pretty much that's all that happened was boring courtroom.
Yeah.
Her apparent supposedly getting a new costume that we don't get to see, and her and the other lawyer chick bonding over men being horrible.
That is the episode, but I think we'll still bring it up and go through point by because there's just small bits of stupidity that it's worth pointing it out on. Like, for instance, they go to Titania, and it's like, again, she knows that she's in a legal, like, thing with this Titania lady, and I thought, like, some of the most basic lawyery stuff is that when you're in a legal back and forth, you don't meet them in person. You have to always make sure it's official, everything's recorded and stuff. And
she's supposed to be competent.
Yeah, and she's like the most incompetent lawyer. In the previous episode, she literally threatened someone with death to sign their thing. And this now, she just goes in person to argue. And of course, it goes as like, what is she? Is she supposed to be a lawyer? Yeah, the writers don't know how to write courtroom stuff.
Well, at this stage, she's still thinking that she's representing herself. So in her head, she's, I guess, being her own lawyer.
But that's like extremely unprofessional to do that, though. Is like meet them in person and to achieve what? Does she really think going there to say, hey, stop using my name and doing stuff that's her plan? It seemed like her plan was just go, tell her to stop, and she thinks it'll achieve something. So stupid.
Yeah, her counterpart, Titania, is using more legal methods than the apparent lawyer.
Then basically they're just talking about, oh, you like the name or don't like the name and stuff. Oh, and she crushes a stapler without even realizing it. It's meant to be a joke, right? And I feel like it's so stupid to take anything in this show seriously, but I'm going to anyway to just show you the inconsistency and bullcrap in it, right? But the whole thing about the first episode is that she needs to learn to control her strength, right? And she's like, I'm fine, everything. Because if there is any moment where she loses track of her strength, she could do insane amounts of damage. Imagine if she was shaking someone's hand and she accidentally lost thought and she would turn their bones into powder. She's that strong. And the show was setting up that she has complete control, where it's a small thing, but it actually has big, significant implications. But they won't follow this through anyway, because the writers are so inept, they're doing things without even thinking about the implications. But the actual implication of this is that she does not control her strength, so much so that she can crush things without even realizing it. She is not responsible with her powers at all. Bruce was completely right in all the cautions, and her saying, I got it under control, is complete bullcrap, contradicted by this small little thing, because the writers and creators, they're not paying attention to anything. Because there's so much stuff that makes her out to be an idiot, selfish, moronic, on so many levels. This is just another example, but they're going to portray her that she's perfectly in control, she'll never lose, everything like that, even though things like this contradict her completely. This scene here, the guy, I don't know, he's like had a stroke. The way he's speaking is so weird and unrealistic, and it's different to how he's spoken in other things, but suddenly he's like, oh, I'm going to get these shoes and stuff. And so it's like, who is this person?
He does seem to have had a bit of a character change. And he's not talking like he did before, which was very weird. Like, if it was a separate character that approached, I'd be fine. It'd just be their quirk. But this is an established character that suddenly had a metamorphosis? I don't know.
Like I said, it's like he had a stroke. And it's not, none of it is funny, but it's like they throw in these things because, isn't this character interaction quirky and stuff? It's not, but it's setting up that he needs her help to get Iron Man shoes, and he's a diva, it turns out, or something like that, because he
collects shoes.
Okay, sure, he's a insanely rich lawyer that spurges money on useless things. That's realistic enough. I buy lots of swords. I guess it's, people could say it's an equivalent. So not criticizing that. I don't know, they basically say she's after something, and he's like, I know someone who sells, I guess, hard to find superhero things. Jen's like, you need outfits, basically.
Which we can't disagree with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I agree, she's wearing awful, frumpy outfits. Anyway, so they go in. It's so much... For a short show, they waste so much time on pointless crap like this exchange here. And anyway, so they get brought into the back. And I'm wondering, why is this guy hiding the fact he's selling, like, this crappy merchandise? It's not stolen, and if it's just... Is it illegal because it's... But it's not technical. This is how...
And it's not trademarked because he's changing the name.
Changing the name. That's how you get away with selling stuff like this, because it's not actually... It's imitating the brand, but it's not duplicating the brand. And so why is it this hidden underground, selling thing? Okay, but anyway, he will take them to the guy that makes stuff if they buy things, so they bought things.
And then they wore it there.
Yeah, because it's funny, right? It's so dumb. And then, but yeah, the lying, where first she tries to say something, and then she abandons her first attempt, and then says, Tatiana referred me, and he doesn't believe her. And then she goes on something else, and that's like, so she's just pulling out bullcrap lies out of the air. And the guy even... This is the scene where it's contextualized. The guy knows they're lying, but they just, my client's an Avenger with no evidence or proof, and then it's clear that they're lying when they celebrate after. See this, where they're celebrating? And then the still guy's like, yeah, I'll still see them. Nonsense. Completely. All of it. All of this show. And then Jen is being interviewed by her boss. Pretty pointless scene, but basically it's like, solve this issue or you're fired, essentially.
So he asks about it. She tries to tell him, but he knows all about it and just says, I don't care. Just fix it. But he's the one that asks the question in the first place of something that he knew about.
Well, he's misogynistic, you see, because he doesn't listen to women. This is the scene. The purpose of the scene is to show boss is misogynistic. The scene. I think so. And because he's not listening, and so Jen meets with the lawyer that is representing her, and she acts like she knows things. And granted, it seems like she has a better understanding than Jen. She's a much better lawyer than Jen by orders of magnitude, even by the bullcrap that they try and spin throughout this episode. And the takeaway is that she also needs to get better clothes. She calls
and you would think that was for court, right? And so you would think that would be a pressing matter, that they would work on that straight away and she would have it for court. Yeah, but then they go to court and she's wearing the same thing. So, in fact, she doesn't wear any new outfit. Like, one of the arcs of this thing was to go to get outfits so she could appear in court, specifically the trial that she's currently in, better dressed. And in the entire episode, she doesn't wear any new outfit. She wears the same thing, contradicting the whole point of getting the outfits. This show is just dumb. So, a whole big scene in a courtroom where they're basically, the setup, the legal reasons why Tatiana is suing, and then, She-Hulk actually self-identifies as She-Hulk. Boring. Nothing interesting happens.
and Tatiana is over-the-top bimbo idiot, so annoying characters.
And the judge says, do you have any more evidence than this one thing that she identifies as She-Hulk? And they're just like, yeah. And they don't automatically think, I have her whole profile on it.
It's pretty obvious.
It's a pretty instantaneous thought of, yes, I've been on a number of dates as She-Hulk. I probably have a work contract that states I show up as She-Hulk. Like, this is specifically things that is every day for them, but they didn't even bring up the whole thing that she actually comes to work and is She-Hulk.
Identifies as She-Hulk as her occupation.
Yes, this is her job, and that's her requirement.
As She-Hulk. There are so many. You're absolutely right, hon. There are so many obvious points of evidence that she has been living under the name and operating as She-Hulk. And they're just like, oh, I can't think of anything. And not only is this so bleedingly obvious that you would have to be a moron to not realize it, seriously, you'd have to be pretty dumb to not have this obvious answer. They play it off that when she eventually does realize it, that it's a really clever maneuver. Like she just, checkmate move. I won the trial, aren't I clever? When it's like, that's pretty obvious.
And she wouldn't have looked nearly as dumb if all they presented is that she is working her occupation as She-Hulk. She wouldn't have had to bring up all these guys that were horrible dates for her and put herself through that humiliating experience. It's just, I have a legal contract and I have to appear at work as She-Hulk.
Exactly. Legal precedent of her operating under the name She-Hulk as an occupation. And this show doesn't even mention that, which is the more obvious one. It's so stupid.
And less embarrassing, too.
Yeah, this show is dumb. It's... So anyway, they're like, oh, look, she admitted she was She-Hulk once in this thing, asked for more. And then it cuts away to the cringe kind of... It's this over-the-top, I'm a fashion person who's also making superhero outfits because... reasons, and suddenly this fashion guy is like, must be a material scientist as well as knowing weapons and everything. Is it's stupid. It worked in The Incredibles. That was like a novelty, fun kind of quirky thing. Now they're just trying to copy The Incredibles thing with nowhere near the history set up build up, because in Incredibles at least there was a history of this fashion designer, and she even explains that supermodels, what's super about them and all that stuff. They have justification for it. This guy's just doing it and there's no explanation or anything, which makes it confusing. You don't know whose clientele really is, if he's even operating inside of the law properly. It seems like he's not. And so where does he get? It's stupid.
So where would having an Avenger as a client be beneficial to him if he can't promote it?
Exactly, especially if he's doing things illegally. And it's like having an Avenger as a client would be the worst thing, because that would get him known by the authorities. If you try to apply any measure of logic to this show, it just crumbles. That's what I mean. It is truly nonsense.
And if he was doing it just financial, the first question would be, can you afford it? This is my rates.
I'm assuming they can because they're lawyers, but like if this is really, really like exceptional stuff, custom made superhero outfits with like bullet resistant material and any number of things, this would cost an insane amount. I'm not even sure high class lawyers would be able to afford this type of stuff. Right? And so the way that they convince him to take on is because she changes size and it would be a challenge. That's really it. She transforms, and she's like, oh, look at me, it's so embarrassing. And he's like, it's like he hasn't seen the Hulk before. He's like, it's amazing. I've got to make a suit now.
And she walks in as this big green Hulk, that's kind of what works.
When he says, I've never heard of you, it's like, are you serious? Like, then they mention you've heard of the Hulk, so...
He specialises in superheroes. You would think he would know superpowered people. Be familiar with who they are?
Yeah. Oh, and I had one other observation at the beginning of this episode that I do wonder if she the show is presenting her that she's famous everywhere. Okay, so according to the context of the show, this guy would obviously know who she is if he works superheroes, if he even knows who the Hulk is. He would definitely have heard of She-Hulk. But the thing is, though, I feel that's still unjustified because she stopped one crazy broad at this, courtroom And that's the only superior thing she did.
And represented the guy.
I guess representing the guy would get
and she had an interview. So she's had a couple of things that she should be known reasonably well to anybody who watches TV.
Yes, good point. Good point. And so, yeah, and that's that scene. And by the way, see what the guy, he has his hand on this plastic kind of muscle cuirass thing, and they're trying to show that this is like a high-end, is making really fancy stuff, and they have the most cheap LARP crap in background as the outfits of what representing the stuff he makes. And it's just, the show is cheap and lazy, and this is just a really clear example of it.
Though when she does finally get her, suit, we're just going to get more bad CGI of her transforming in her CGI suit.
Mm-hmm. She runs into one of the guys she dated, and he's cringe because men are just cringe in this show. Really, I think, especially this episode, every single guy in this episode was acting bizarrely stupid and moronic or misogynistic.
The shoe lawyer wasn't horrible, misogynistic or anything like that. He was just weird.
He was weird, that's what I mean. I was like, every guy is just cringe and weird or stupid or misogynistic. These writers don't know how to write people. And it's supposed
Human
to be
interaction must be fairly foreign.
Exactly. And this is supposed to be a sitcom reliant on character humour, and they just don't know how to write people. Flat. So yeah, cringe and and this is the reveal where they're eating, right? And then they talk about the dates, and it's like, oh, I went on dates as She-Hulk. That means I was not being in the world as She-Hulk. Aren't I smart? You stupid idiot. And then, so back to the courtroom, and the dates are there, and this is what it's cringe because the dates are all idiots, and she kept referring to herself in the third person as writer. Myself, I found that offensive. It's like, I know what it's like to be offended as a writer. Just try to put up with the writing in this show. It's for one. There's this other weird undertone where she starts to feel really, I guess, vulnerable personally of herself as Jen Walters, because they kind of talk her down, especially when the guy that she slept with comes on and they ask her, would you be interested in her as Jen? Is like, no, I wouldn't have been. And then there's this close-up of like Jen looking really sad about it and stuff. And I just don't know what they're trying to say. If there's like, if she thinks being She-Hulk is great or if it's a portrayal of her true self. And it just doesn't make sense, because the reality is she can transform into She-Hulk. It's not one or the other. It's just a net benefit.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to portray that she's feeling vulnerable and worried that she herself is not enough and that she has to be something else to be desired, and trying to put internal turmoil or something. But
the thing is, though, embracing this gift that she has isn't a betrayal of her former self. It's just, aren't you there? There would be I'm hard-pressed to think of anyone who would think that as like, if I suddenly had the ability to turn into Thor, ripped as, right, and the ability to turn back, like, I wouldn't think it's a betrayal of my current self. I would embrace it. I'd be like, hell yeah. What's the...
Girly feelings, a little bit different than macho boy stuff,
really?
I guess.
Enlighten me, my dear, please. Do you get this? I don't.
Only on a vague level. But, if she's feeling that she's only accepted as She-Hulk, why would she not embrace it more? Mm-hmm. Is kind of where you're going. But she kind of feels like she should be okay being her, but nobody wants her as herself. And that's hard to deal with.
Well, this is the thing, right? Of course she would be able to find someone, because the show's trying to paint guys as just stupid, vain idiots, right? And maybe the type of men that the women who made this show are attracted to, maybe. But no, like, there are heaps of good guys in the world that would be more than happy to, go out with just regular Jen. And so it wouldn't be as hard as that. But to try and use the show's terminology, because the show's pretty hung up on guys I guess gauging and rating women in number scales, because they do it regularly, right? So in the context of the show, they're basically saying Jen is a 5 and she can turn into a 10 as She-Hulk, right? Wouldn't that be a win still? I know I'm not a 10. I'd say maybe I'm around a 5 or something like that. And my wife still loves me anyway. Love you, hun.
love you too.
Right? And I wouldn't complain, and I don't think my wife could complain either. If I could suddenly turn into Chris Hemsworth ripped just magically, I wouldn't feel like, oh, how horrible was I? I don't get it.
It is getting a lot of transformation weirdness going on with our shapeshifter earlier on, and now her complaining that she can change into somebody that looks more appealing. I don't know. It's getting a little bit confusing.
Is it because she doesn't like the fact she has to acknowledge that in her regular self she wasn't a supermodel? I thought that was just pretty plain obvious for most people to acknowledge reality like that. I'm not a supermodel. I know that. Doesn't upset me. But does she think like, is this what's upsetting her so much? That she thought she was a 10 and being She-Hulk is like undeniable proof that she wasn't as attractive to men as she thought she was, and that's what's upsetting her.
Or maybe that somebody she found attractive didn't actually find her attractive, only her alter ego. And so maybe that hurt a little bit. We're all just kind of guessing at this point.
Lots of people experience that, though. I've been rejected. Just grow up, find someone who loves you for who you are. But she has this incredible advantage where she can just transform into someone, who's got perfect hair, perfect body and everything like that.
And it just happens to be green.
And she's acting like, oh, it means I actually wasn't as hot as I thought I was. I think that is a fair enough reading of what's going on, and it makes her look really vain. And
nobody likes to be told they are unattractive to somebody.
But that's just reality, though. Of course you're unattractive to someone. And you're obviously attracted to someone as well. People have preferences.
Girls have feelings.
I don't expect everyone in the world to find me attractive, and I'm not hung up about it, but it seems like she is. Sorry, it's bizarre. Like I said, they're trying to hit on this feeling thing of woe is Jen, and it's like, I don't, yeah. Look, my wife, you see it a little bit, I guess.
I try to look at the girly side.
Girly side. Anyway, and then they win the court case. That was easy.
No counterpoints, no further questioning. Just, sure, we'll take that.
Yeah, and there's no... They really don't know how to write courtroom dramas. They're right. There's no twist, nothing clever, nothing interesting even in the setup, right? And that's it. And then they go out, and they have drinks, and it's like they're friends now.
Because they're bonding over men being hopeless.
Yeah, and boring. And then she goes back to the outfit studio, gets the outfits, goes into change, and that's the show. And it ends with the guy taking a box that reveals Daredevil's helmet. But that's it. She just walks in, you don't see the outfit or anything.
She gets given a bonus outfit that he's like, I made this for you as well. And she's like, okay, but I don't think I'll need it.
And this is the end, righty? That's the episode. Unbelievably pointless and stupid. It's like Marvel's outdone themselves with how bad this show is. It's not getting better.
Though there is a positive that when you get to the end, you're like, oh, that's the end already?
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. And the other thing, there's so much pointless filler that goes nowhere that it's just hollow. And so I don't need to deconstruct every badly written sentence because the sentences are just dumb and like they're acting stupid, but the construction isn't technically nonsensical. It just doesn't suit the characters. Whereas Rings of Power is so condensed bad, and it takes me 3 hours to get through 1 hour. At least this one, we'd basically breeze through it. It was just, oh, that's bad, and that's bad, and that's bad. And that's it.
At least for me, I have to defend Rings of Power enough that it's not as painful for me to watch.
Yeah, okay.
I can kind of watch that. It's pretty. I don't think too hard. It's just a fantasy world. This, it's just a struggle to watch.
Yep, it is indeed. There we go. She-Hulk episode 5. And remember that I said in the previous episode that it was clear they're going to do nothing of significance. They're not going to follow up with payoffs. They're not going to try and build her, take her on an arc, help her learn to become a superhero. It was just going to be her realizing, oh, isn't it great that a superhero, because it benefits me, not benefits others. That's exactly what they're doing that. But then I thought they might have tried to do some type of arc. But the fact that they are not following up with any consequences at all and actually actively contradicting some massive problems and consequences that they set up, like Wong breaking someone out of prison and then not being arrested for it, and then Titania trying to murder people and she's not arrested or in jail or anything. Like, no consequences, nothing. Makes the show so... when I say pointless, it's like there's no value and there's no need to because nothing happens, nothing progresses, nothing changes or evolves.
There's no character development.
Yes.
So nobody improves, nobody changes, well, except the weird lawyer that changed personality, but that's a side thing. But like, even in the court case, they didn't say, okay, so any money received from selling She-Hulk now goes to Jennifer Walters. Nothing even like that where she suddenly has an increase in money and anything like that. No, nothing like that. And even the brother, the closest he gets to development is that he shows up and now he's got all this stock that he can't sell. And that's not going to come back.
They won't follow up on that.
That won't be a thing, no. And so nobody has had any sort of development. We don't know anything more about the best friend. We don't know much about anybody except for Jennifer Walters, kind of.
Mm-hmm. And that is it. That is She-Hulk. Pathetically pointless and stupid. Episode 5. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. And as always, stay on watch.
Bye.
Shadow of the Conqueror is the breakout debut novel by Shad Brooks.
Truly incredible. I absolutely loved this book. Honestly, it's one of the best books I've ever read. S. Keith Hall.
Now, Shadow of the Conqueror is coming to you in an epic graphic novel adaptation with the incredibly talented art of Mike S. Miller. This will bring its dark, confronting story to fans and new readers alike in another beloved format, making the story more accessible than ever before, and enabling current fans to enjoy it in new ways.
I was engrossed in the tale of the Conqueror. I laughed, cried, growled with anger, and shouted with joy. But also during this entertaining ride of emotion, I came away with mental growth and new perspective on the human condition. Andrew Johnson.
Mike is a 28-year veteran of the comic book industry, famous for his work on DC Comics' Injustice series and George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones-related graphic novels.
I've read so many novels I've lost count, fantasy genre or otherwise, but in my opinion, this is one of the best. Seaton 425.
The author of Shadow of the Conqueror, Shad Brooks, has been a fan of both comic books and Mike's work for many years, and is thrilled to be working with him to bring this graphic novel to the highest standards possible.
I don't typically listen to audiobooks multiple times, but this is my 4th time through and I'm loving it more each time. Highly recommend for anyone who loves fantasy action stories. C. Barker.
The book will be separated into 4 graphic novel volumes. This first one, entitled Enemies of Self, has 48 pages of stunning art visualizing the amazing and unique world of Everfall with some of the best work Mike has ever done.
It must be admitted that there was a large amount of skepticism when this book was recommended. However, a story that would leave the reader hooked and begging for more was not something that was expected. The overall plot and flow of the story was simply phenomenal. I highly recommend this book. It is filled with action, humor, love, hate, science, and the psychology of the human condition. History Rewriter.
Separating the book into 4 volumes gives great opportunity to adapt more of the work and even add new content not seen in the original novel. Far from being given secondary regard as a token adaptation that doesn't accurately represent the source material, the graphic novels are being made with the intent to form a crucial part of the Everfall story, revealing fascinating aspects to the characters and world not found in any other format.
Powerful and gut-wrenching. I laughed, introspected, winced, wondered, cried, and will be revisiting this world. Michael Larson.
At the time of launching this Indiegogo campaign, the graphic novel is completed and ready to print. This is not to fund the creation of the graphic novel, but to give you the chance to get your hands on it. We will be able to place the print order as soon as this launch campaign ends, and you will get the graphic novel in your hands much sooner without needing to wait for the graphic novel's completion. With the launch of the graphic novel, I'm very excited to announce that during this Indiegogo campaign, I will be releasing a refined version of Shadow of the Conqueror as a 2nd edition version. This is not the sequel, but a more refined and polished version of Shadow of the Conqueror, with an incredible new cover made by Chris McGrath. The 2nd edition will at first be an exclusive in the Indiegogo campaign, where you will be able to get your hands on a limited edition version of the 2nd edition novel with the graphic novel covers, which will not be available ever again once this launch campaign ends. And in addition to this, we've gone even further and made premium, high-class, display-quality, collector edition, leather-bound versions of the 2nd edition novel and graphic novel, both of which will be available for a limited time during this launch campaign.
Way better than I thought it would be. Bought because I watched Shad on YouTube. I never thought his book would be as good as this is. Kinda blown away. Jevin Curley.
With special collector edition covers and limited Everfall merchandise, this is your one and only chance to secure these special versions of this phenomenal epic fantasy graphic novel. Just because the mainstream comic book industry is declining in both quantity and quality, doesn't mean we still can't make great graphic novels for those who love them and attract new fans to the format. Please share this Indiegogo campaign with as many people you feel would be interested and who would love to enjoy such a visually stunning and emotionally riveting story as this Chronicles of Everfall, Shadow of the Conqueror, Volume 1, Enemies of Self.